Hello, my name is Connor,
And I'm Jason.
and you are listening to the Amazed and Perplexed podcast.
Well, want to welcome you in. This morning we are going to be focusing on Matthew 15. And if you're new to the program, we are walking behind Jesus, looking over his shoulder, trying to notice the people around him, the context that's there, to give dignity to all the players, if you will, in every story, as well as asking ourselves, and this is the focal point of our time together, what amazes and perplexes us, just serving as a model for you, the listener, to consider Scripture just another lens, to become more and more comfortable and finding the new of the living and active Scripture that God offers us. So, in Matthew, we are coming back. We've been in John for a few chapters because there are just some very specific John things that the other Gospels don't feature. A little bit odd to nail down timeline, but we're going back in the Matthew account, Matthew 15, beginning in verse 29, and he's just healed this woman's daughter, and we covered that, I don't know how many episodes ago, and so he's leaving there, and he's going to the Sea of Galilee, but kind of setting us up. Connor, anything that would be good for us to be thinking as we walk into this situation?
Yeah, I think this is, it's funny, Jason and I spent a good 15 minutes trying to figure out where we're going to go with this, and then now just actually, I was just staring at the passage, and I was like, oh yeah, I think maybe this is where God should have us today. As I speak, I think it's November 5th. In the United States, there is a government shutdown that's affecting SNAP benefits, and so I think in the county we're in right now, 1 in 5 children are beneficiaries of the SNAP program, food assistance, and so, man, it just feels very real to me. We live in such a blessed time and a blessed place where, like, food scarcity, when we speak of food scarcity, usually it's in the context of like healthy food, not just like calories, you know?
Mm-hmm. Right.
And to know that for most of human history, the struggle to find and get enough calories to get to the next day was basically all that consumed people. And so we're going to hear a story about Jesus feeding 4,000. And I'm going to try to keep my perspective on, I've had fasts in my life. There have been times in my life where I didn't have as much money to eat as much as I as much as I would, or eat the things that I would want to eat. But also just try to get in the mindset of I know people that at certain times in their life, food has been truly scarce and they weren't sure where they were going to eat. They went, for dinner, they went to bed, that sort of deal. And so I just want to keep that perspective open, that when you're hungry, your brain operates in a different way than when you're satiated. When you don't have the proper nutrients to do all the tasks you need to do, your mind becomes very singularly focused. And yeah, I think it's just really important, because I'm not in danger of starving. I don't think Jason's in danger of starving either. But yet there could be people around us that now begin to have more of these fears than they might usually, but then also recognize that this would have been a much bigger fear just continually throughout human history, especially the people that we're going to read about today. I
really appreciate that perspective. We run a food pantry. Our church runs a food pantry every Tuesday, and it wasn't quite twice as many as they usually serve yesterday. This is a Wednesday. But it was a noticeable increase. And so I think that's really good framing. Mm-hmm. I'm going to jump right into verse 29 there of Matthew 15. It says, Jesus left there and went along the Sea of Galilee. Then he went up on a mountainside and sat down. Great crowds came to him, bringing the lame, the blind, the crippled, the mute, and many others, and laid them at his feet, and he healed them. The people were amazed when they saw the mute speaking, the crippled made well, the lame walking, and the blind seeing, and they praised the God of Israel. Jesus called his disciples to him and said, I have compassion for these people. They've already been with me 3 days and have nothing to eat. I do not want to send them away hungry, or they may collapse on the way. His disciples answered, Where could we get enough bread in this remote place to feed such a crowd? How many loaves do you have? Jesus asked. 7, they replied, and a few small fish. He told the crowd to sit down on the ground. Then he took the 7 loaves and the fish, and when he had given thanks, he broke them and gave them to the disciples, and they in turn to the people. They all ate and were satisfied. Afterward, the disciples picked up 7 basketfuls of broken pieces that were left over. The number of those who ate was 4,000 men, besides women and children. After Jesus had sent the crowd away, he got into the boat and went to the vicinity of Magadan. What do you think about that pronunciation? Magadan?
Nailed
Magadan?
it, I assume.
There
probably.
it is. Just like Jesus said it. So, what about this fascinating encounter jumps out at you? What amazes you, Connor?
I think I'm going to cheat. I think I'm going to go with perplexing because it's just what's on my mind. So I'm so fascinated by the comparison between this and the previous feeding of many, many thousands of people. And
that does need to be said. I remember growing up, I didn't realize there were 2 mass feedings.
Well, I think in like Bible class when you're a kid, it's like I wouldn't try to differentiate the two. It wouldn't be super important to me. You'd just be like, you just gotta know there's some fishies, there's some loaves, and somehow
everyone ate well.
Everyone ate well. But I'm really interested. I went back and pulled up Matthew 14, where the interplay is where it says, "This is a remote place and it's already getting late. Send the crowds away so they can go to the villages and buy themselves some food." That's the disciples speaking to Jesus. And then it says, Jesus replied, They do not need to go away. You give them something to eat." And it's this almost combative, weird, back and forth that the disciples have with Jesus. And then this is all started off with Jesus calling to his disciples to come to him. And they're like, "Hey, I've got compassion for them." And so I'm really perplexed. I'm really perplexed at why the difference for Jesus. Is it because they've already been through this? Why was Jesus acting that way the first time around? I'm just really there seems to be a material difference in how the emotions of Jesus, how emotional Jesus is about this situation, how he fed these people and how he's feeding the people before.
Yeah, that's the perfect nexus of my perplexion is not just Jesus' response. I just feel like everybody, it's weird. It's just weird. It's like this just happened. We don't know how many days were between, but it's not a long period of time.
You wouldn't forget.
Yeah, it's baffling, the whole thing. I would think the apostle would be like, "Hey, we know what's next. And we found even more fish than we had last time, or more bread than we had last time, And it's like, I don't understand any of this. It's so weird. When people say, "Well, I don't know if we can trust the canonization process," this would be one of the things I'd be like, well, that might explain this, because it just seems like, how did you forget? Now, the next chapter in Matthew, he will literally say, "Hey, remember when I fed 5,000? They're like, "Uh-huh." "Remember when I fed 4,000? "Uh-huh." If that passage wasn't in there, I'd be like, is this a redundancy? Did a scribe...
did 2 people reporting the story back and somebody's like, "It was 4,000, it was 5,000.
Exactly, yeah. And so his own words say these are 2 different occurrences, but it just relates that idea. If I'm like, "Oh, Jesus, I don't know how you'll solve this in my life today." And now that I'm saying it, I'm like, I know exactly how this happens, because I'm like, I have a bill to pay and I don't know how I'm going to pay it. And then the money comes through. And then 2 days later, I have a bill to pay. Even I will think, well, God will probably come through because he came through last time. But is there that part of them that is so human that it's almost escaped them? This feels somehow qualitatively different enough to not think, "Hey, here's bread." I just don't understand how this conversation isn't, "Hey, Jesus, I'm noticing we have bread and fish just like last time."
Well, it's interesting. I've often wondered, is it the feeling of so it says, Jesus says, "They have already been with me 3 days and have nothing to eat." And it's in the disciples' mind, are they actively hungry too all the time? Because they're just people back then, and you were just hungry. That's just what you were if you were not extremely wealthy. And in their minds, they're like, well, if this isn't all the time, if this isn't any time that Jesus wants to, sort of thing, he would do it more. Because I'm hungry, and I'm watching Jesus, and I know that Jesus is probably going to be hungry because maybe he, and so it's that logical trying to think it out of well, if I could magically make food appear, I would never allow myself to be hungry. I would always be satiated. And maybe they're seeing the fact that it's like, well, Jesus eating the same thing we're eating. And so maybe there has to be this weird like justification or trying to explain it all away, because like in the mind of somebody who is not God or not trying to follow after God, that makes zero sense on why you would ever choose to not be fully satiated.
Yeah, that is a really good observation. And I think the another thing that magnifies this, can you imagine you and I are together and we're out at a remote place, and it's not till the third day that we would say, hey, we should probably get something to eat? I mean, that would be, now we can make some assumptions. They brought some food. Maybe the first couple days they were eating off of whatever each individual person, family brought with them. I guess that's possible. But if I'm with a large crowd and I'm with them more than 3 hours, if I don't have a plan for feeding them, I mean, it's just such a different worldview in that regard.
It is funny because I think back to when I was a youth pastor and like what a big deal was if like I didn't order the correct number of pizzas. Like, I don't know, if we ran out of pizza, like, can you imagine like all the the horror of running out of pizza for all the kids that, you know, had zero chance of didn't miss their breakfast, for sure didn't miss their dinner. There'd also be snacks there, but like they might not have enough pizza. Like, it's so funny, but that was a big deal. It happened once or twice, and it was embarrassing. And I was like, I can make sure that never happens again. I will always become
and
with more.
Yeah, you're scarred. Yeah, forever. The first year I was at Memorial Drive Church of Christ, that church hosted and has for the whole time that workshop was running this Wednesday night. They called it the Feeding of the 5,000, and for the record, never more than about 800 people there. But and they would just wind this line through, and it was always chicken. I mean, it's just stereotype chicken. I don't know why, but this year, my first year, I assume it's my fault somehow, but they underordered, or more people showed up. And we were getting to the end, and there was still 100-something people, you know, that were winding down this hallway, and we were running out of this chicken. And so Terry sent me to buy pizzas, and I felt so guilty. Like, I was apologizing to people. Keep in mind, all this was free food for them. But as they're walking, I'm like, I'm so sorry we're out of chicken. I'm so sorry. Like, we're still feeding them pizza, but I'm like, I'm just so sorry. I know this isn't the experience you expected. And that just, I can't, this whole thing is mind blowing to me, you know, that people would be so consumed. Like, I think if I went to, my stepmom recently had a fall, and they thought it was going to be bad, and it ended up being like amazingly good relative to what the severity that it was supposed to, in our minds, going to happen. And so I'm like, but if somebody's doing that instantaneously, how long would that hold my attention? You know, oh, he just cast out that demon. Oh, that guy was blind and he could see. Oh, and I mean, and like definitive, no like production, you know. Jesus is not like, hey, everybody watch this. He just heals the person and moves on to the next guy. And so that's not exactly true. There are times he draws attention, I guess. But anyway, my point is, they are so consumed with both his message and his behavior that they're getting to day 3. Like I would seriously, there's no world that I'm not with my family and we've run out of food, and I'm like, guys, we better start heading back on day 1.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so I guess is what amazes me. They're so consumed with this experience. It's not, even if they noticed it, it's not defining them. And I think it has something to do with the fact they dealt with hunger in a very different way than I do.
For sure.
Because I do have the magic of always having food. I'm just having to choose what food will eventually kill me and what food will keep me alive. But my choices are totally different than theirs.
Absolutely. Well, man, that is also what amazes me. I don't know if I'd really been able to think about it until you articulate it in that way. But the fact that Jesus is keeping their attention and keeping them around, and it isn't this panicked, you know, whatever. In 31, it says, the people were amazed when they saw the mute speaking, the crippled made well, and the lame walking, and the blind seeing, and they praised the God of Israel. And so it's like, obviously, the end of that is the end of like right before Jesus will start feeding them. There's something about what's happening around Jesus and what Jesus is doing, where the people, like, the magnitude of what they're not just all people experiencing the healing, but what they're also witnessing is so grand and so magnificent that the feeling of hunger and the worries about where the next meal is are, I don't want to say paltry, but they're not as important as what they're witnessing. And so, man, I think so often about my own discomfort, and I will chase away my discomfort at whatever cost. Almost discomfort is feel, it's not the case, but it feels as if it's the great sin of our day and age, or the fear. It's the thing to be avoided at all costs. But yet their picture of what God is doing through Jesus, what Jesus is doing here now, is so good that like their literal hunger, like not just like me, like hungry because I didn't get my 3 square meals a day, but like actual hunger because they don't have enough calories for their bodies to operate in the way that they're supposed to. They're so transfixed on what Jesus is doing that doesn't matter. And man, that is really beautiful to me.
Yeah. So this is, I think I was raised a critic of big crowds showing up and revival and things like that, which sounds so weird, but Churches of Christ, in my experience in the U.S., now that's just my experience, but slow and steady. Mm-hmm. There was, we might have a campaign, go door knocking, this kind of thing. But I mean, if 2 people joined the church, it'd be like, man, that was a big success, Mm-hmm. And then we'd hear, oh man, this guy preached in India and 5,000 people were baptized. Well, then you find out from the people that lived in India, it's like, yeah, 5,000 people were baptized this weekend. And then another preacher came and 10,000 people prayed Jesus into their heart the next week. 5,000 of those people are the same way, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So it's a little bit cynical, I think, of Pentecost, this kind of thing. And just in general, I think when I preach, there's this subconscious, or teach in any way, I'm like, how much can you tolerate? Matter of fact, there's a quote from a book called Canoeing the Mountains that Tim Rush has shared with us, that good leadership is disappointing people at a rate they can absorb. And I think with the way the church is structured now, that's a really legitimate concept. And we try to, we don't want to shock our people and, you know what I mean, we want to keep pushing, keep growing, but we don't want to be too offensive too quickly, this kind of thing. When I hear of some of like these college revivals that have happened, in recent months, and man, they started and then they went all night or 3 days and this kind of thing, I'm like, because I believe in God and because I try to be a trusting person of other people of faith, I'm like, I'm going to say that's legit. Mm-hmm. I don't know if I even want to be there. And I'm just owning that. And it's like, why would you not want to be there? I haven't had that experience where I'm like, oh, day after day after day is so amazing. Like I have a few hours experience and it's really intense and really beautiful. Maybe a weekend, but if there's a lot of structure, like I'm at a retreat or something, and that was really good. But the idea of going to someplace expecting to be there a few hours and then being there a few days, that is just not my lived experience. And it's one of those things that by faith, I believe that's legit. I believe it's good. I certainly believe this happened with Jesus, but I'm talking about more today. Mm-hmm. But then if somebody was like, man, we need to have a revival, Jason, we need to have something that you would be part of, that people would come and stay for days. I'm like, man, when I've been in charge of stuff for days, it's challenging to keep them for days when we've already set the expectation they've been for days. I can't imagine just voluntarily missing meals and doing this. And I'm like, man, is that my faith so tiny, so tiny? And Tim talks about scaffolding. Like we put scaffolding around stuff. We can't allow God to breathe, And I don't even know. It's just more of a confession than anything, that this is an example of one of those times that I don't think he said, hey, we're going out for 3 days in the wilderness and we're going to do this camping experiential, spiritual thing.
That'd be $800, please. No.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I'm just like, man, that's, I don't know. It just is something that I, again, it's not that I'm saying I don't believe it happens for other people. It's never happened for me. Mm-hmm. And it's just hard to put myself in that space.
Yeah. I think I share a lot of your natural skepticism. But I do think there is power in still choosing to both trust in God and trust in the church, that those things are legitimate. And I think I think having skepticism is, I think, okay. And being shrewd is okay. But still choosing to trust and not feel the need to tear down, I think is really, I think it's a healthy place to be. I don't think it's the apex of where we need to be, because I've known people that chase this sort of high, where it's like if you're not having revival, you're not actually doing this whole thing.
Yep.
And so again, like we talk about all the time, there's a pendulum swing back and forth. But I do think for personalities like you and me who have a natural skepticism towards these things, I think it's a good challenge to be more open. To be more open to those possibilities and those opportunities, because I think we've taken a good step, and I'm on the same page as you of hearing about different things and having some maybe initial skepticism, but just laying it at the feet of Jesus. I'm going to trust God. I'm going to trust my brothers and sisters that it's good and it's legitimate. But I also think, man, if you were like, hey Jay, if you invited me out to do something, to have some sort of spiritual experience on the weekend, and you're like, it'd be a few hours, be great, fantastic. But you're like, but it might turn into a 2 to 3 day thing. I'd be like, well, I can't do that. I'm out on that.
Yeah.
But if you were to like guarantee, like, also you're going to feel the presence of God, and the Spirit's going to come, and people are going to get healed, and there's going to be the blind are going to see, and there's miraculous teaching and healing, I'd be like, okay, well that sounds more reasonable. But am I putting myself in the place to experience those things, right? Mm-hmm. Because like I want the guarantee, like I want to be able to go sign up on a website and be like, okay, I will grow in this way. I will experience this sort of teaching and this sort of programming. And I think this can be a microcosm of following Jesus, where it's like, I think most of the time following Jesus is not one big revival moment. I think it's mostly slow things interspersed with some big mountaintop moments. But because of my natural aversion to the mountaintop, to the revival type feeling as being the sole way of doing it, I think I oftentimes probably miss out. I think I'll get to the end of my life, and there've been times where, like, if I just dove headfirst into something or been willing for something to be bigger than it was in a moment, that God would have been like, yeah, Connor, that would have turned into a 3-day revival. If you had been open to hearing and listening, you would have seen it. And now there's other sides. I'm not saying it's all bad, that like all I need to do is chase after revival or chase after that experience. But I think it's something similar to what we've talked about with miracles in general. Like I need to be more open to both praying to God to do miraculous works in me and through me, and I also need to be willing to pray to God, like, hey, God, make me interruptible enough that I could experience something like this, because I'm not interruptible enough to experience something like this. That's
right. And I don't know why I didn't use the word skeptic, but that's what it is. And I recognize I was trained to be a skeptic. I was trained that if you're not experiencing yourself, it probably doesn't exist. And then it's only amplified by the dynamic of I'm doing a work trying to reach people, and I'm reaching 5 people a year. I don't know, 1 person a year, whatever, 1 person every 20 years. And then a church comes to town, and they reach 5,000 people in half an hour, and I'm like, wow, they must have been watering it down, or it must be entertainment, or it must be, which
it's like, for me, it's like, oh, are those people really their lives going to be really changed? Are they just going to go back to doing the same thing before?
Yeah, let's see where that is a month from now.
And again, maybe that's valid, maybe it's not, but also it's like people got fed, and It's like, for me, what I need to look in the mirror oftentimes is when I have that skepticism, it's okay to be like, man, I really hope there's some long-term impact from that. And that's like, true revival does come with long-term impact, but it's also like, man, I shouldn't minimize starving people when they get fed,
Yes. I've lost that whole thread in my thinking, so thank you.
No, but still, if a revival is people desperate and hungry for the word of God, and hungry for his, thirsty for the living water, and they get fed, and maybe it's just for a night or a couple nights, and then like maybe there's some, backtracking, or there isn't the long-term change that I would personally hope to see as evidence for the movement of God. Like, yeah, but maybe people tasted for a night, and maybe people drank for a night, and it's like, why is that not good enough for me? Like, why is it not good enough for me? Mm-hmm. The answer is lack of faith and belief for me. Mm-hmm. It's not about them.
Yeah. And one thing that's just been proven over and over again, you may have a lot of ideals, but what you believe is what you tell yourself over and over and over again. Much of it's subconscious. And that's it. I've told myself over and over and over again that it doesn't work like that, whatever it is. The other thing that jumps into my mind in relation to this, and I think this is just really remarkable, Jesus, when he points back, and we'll get to this in a few episodes, but when he points back to this event, he is not, how do I say this? if we had an event, you and I were like, we're going to lead an event, and 5,000, men and women, 10,000 people show up, and then the next day, all those people disperse, and we may or may not ever see them again. I think the church at large would say that's a failure.
Absolutely.
And then if a few weeks later or days later, if we feed 4,000 people, maybe some are the same, maybe that's all different group, plus women and children, so now what, 8,000 or whatever. And then the next day it's just down to the 12, we'd feel like a failure.
Man, Jason, I feel this in my personal life. Because I don't have a professional ministry that somebody pays me to build, like what my personal ministry is can feel so like, it feels sometimes like a flag floating in the wind, where it's like what my personal ministry is one week is almost solely being the most gracious father and husband that I possibly can be. And then other weeks, God put somebody in front of me that has a faith crisis, and for whatever reason, I happen to be in the right time and position. And it's like, then I'm with that person for a week or two working through things, and then suddenly that person moves on. And it's like, there's no numbers for me to keep track of. There's no, I'm not buying into like a church system so much that like for me, success is, well, there are more people on a Sunday, or there are more people on a Wednesday night, or there are more people at a small group. And so for me, even though I know those things are not a measure of the way that God views them, because my ministry is so, it is like a walk, in the wilderness, people in and out, and some constants of family and some very close friends. Man, it can feel, I can often invalidate what God does in my life, because I don't have that solid thing that there's not a foundation that I can exactly point to that I'm building that up. And so this is something I struggle with. Maybe daily might be strong, but it's a feeling that I will often invalidate things that God does in my life, because I don't have the tangible numbers that I used to get.
Well, and as a person that is employed, one of my biggest fears is I am standing in the way of God. Like there's something I'm doing non-intentionally because I'm afraid, because I don't think big enough, because of my skepticism, whatever it is, that I'm holding something back. And if I could just get out of the way, then God would really work. And I think that does happen sometimes. A long term, I've been at the same church for 20 something years, and it's like, I'll bet you if I got out of the way and they brought somebody else in, other things would happen. And it's not about me feeling insecure about my salvation or even my personal ministry. I really love what I do. But the fact of the matter is, I'm a human and I hold stuff back. And so I think that is really interesting. The other thing there's two things that pop in my head. Number one, there is no record of David on his way to the battlefield saying, I'm going to kill me a giant. There's no record of Joshua, thinking beforehand, what we should do? We should walk around these walls. They didn't know the mission of God and weren't confident of it often until it was happening. And so I'm really grateful that they were living a lot like we were living. You wake up, you do your best. When Peter and John heal the guy at the temple, they weren't going there to heal the guy at the temple. They were just going to pray. They were just doing their routine, Yeah. And I think that's important, because we hinge on, at least my history, do you see how many 3,000 people were baptized and then 5,000? And then we think that they're always joining these big mega churches. Most of the first couple hundred years of Christianity, the church was whoever was in their house, maybe their neighborhood. They weren't meeting with hundreds of people. And so the organization of our churches over the last 1,000 years or how many hundreds of years, I'm not saying it's evil, but it does mislead us that healthy churches are the big churches. And it's just really, yeah. I could go on and on about that, but I'm mostly saying that, this affects me, that I preach to a group of people that maybe 300 people or whatever, and I'm like, so what if that drops to 50, or what if it jumps to 1,000? And I'm like, I don't want it to be 1,000, honestly, but for me, it's like, I want to have a heart that's like, you gave me 50, fabulous. You gave me 2, fabulous. You gave me 1,000, fabulous. And I'm just recognizing I am the problem sometimes.
I just want to wrap up. It's one of my favorite episodes. And right now, if I can speak quickly enough, it might come in under 30 minutes, which would be miraculous. But I got to speak quickly. I just want to say, man, this is what the kingdom of God looks like. It looks like people being fed. It looks like the blind seeing and the sick being healed and the captives being set free. And so if you find yourself in a position, especially right now with all the needs, all the physical needs to be met, feeding somebody, even if it's just for one night, even if it's pizza when they thought they were going to get chicken, that's still what the kingdom of God looks like. And so, go forth and do likewise. Grace, peace, and love.